Every single morning, millions of people wake up, walk to their windows, and wipe them down. They grab a cloth, they mop up the water, they toss the cloth aside, and they don't think twice about it. It's just one of those things, like emptying the bins or checking the post. You do it. You move on. But here's what nobody tells you about that water. It isn't just an annoyance. It isn't just a cosmetic problem that makes your windows look grimy. That moisture is working against your home every single day. It's soaking into the timber frames. It's creeping into the walls. It's feeding the black mold that grows in the corners you try not to look at. And over time, slowly, quietly, it's doing serious structural damage that costs serious money to fix. The average home loses heat through windows. We know that. But condensation is actually making it worse because a damp wall conducts cold far more efficiently than a dry one. So your heating bill goes up, your air quality goes down, and that persistent damp smell that you've started to think of as normal? That isn't normal. The wild part is that this problem has a solution, a simple one, a cheap one. One that people were using hundreds of years before double glazing existed, before dehumidifiers were invented, before anyone tried to sell you an overpriced spray in a green bottle. And almost nobody is talking about it. So what do most people do when they notice the condensation? They do what the adverts tell them to do. They buy a dehumidifier. They spend 200, 300 pounds on a machine that hums in the corner of the room, fills up a little tank every couple of days, and makes them feel like they're dealing with the problem. And in one very narrow sense, they are. The dehumidifier is pulling moisture out of the air. But here's the thing. It's doing it constantly, forever, because the source of the problem is still there. The cold glass, the warm indoor air, the same physics that caused the condensation in the first place. You haven't fixed anything. You've just bought a subscription to a symptom. Then there's double glazing. And look, double glazing is genuinely better than single glazing. Nobody's arguing with that. But if double glazing solved condensation, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Millions of homes across the country have double glazed windows and still wake up to wet sills every morning. Because condensation doesn't care about the glass. It forms on the coldest surface available, and that surface is often the wall right next to the window, the reveal, the plaster, the timber surround. The glass gets the blame. The real culprit gets ignored. And the sprays, the anti-condensation coatings, the moisture repellent treatments, they work for about 3 weeks, maybe 4 if you're lucky. Then you're back to square one, a little lighter in the wallet, and a little more cynical than before. Every one of these solutions treats condensation like it's a substance you can repel or collect. But it isn't. It's a symptom of an imbalance. And until you address the imbalance, you're just running in circles. So if the modern solutions all miss the point, what does actually work? To find that, you have to go back. Not decades, centuries. Before drywall, before gypsum board, before the entire industry of modern plasterwork, people built their walls out of clay. Not because they didn't know any better. Because clay, it turns out, is one of the most intelligent building materials that has ever existed. And it took us about 200 years of progress to accidentally forget why. Clay plaster is exactly what it sounds like. It's a mixture of raw clay, sand, and usually some kind of fiber, traditionally straw, hemp, or even animal hair, troweled onto walls and left to dry. That's it. No chemicals, no polymers. No proprietary blend of synthetic compounds that took a team of engineers 3 years to develop. Just earth. The kind of thing you can literally pull out of the ground. And for most of human history, that's exactly what people did. Homes across Europe, Africa, Asia, the Americas, they were all finished with clay plaster as a matter of course. Not as a luxury, not as a trend, as a practical, obvious choice. Because when you live in a building, you breathe, you cook, you wash, you exist. And all of that activity puts moisture into the air. Clay plaster absorbs that moisture quietly without fuss and releases it back out again when the air dries. The wall itself becomes a living, breathing regulator. The technical term for this is hygroscopic behavior. The wall responds to the environment around it. When humidity rises, clay pulls moisture in. When humidity drops, it lets it back out. Slowly, gently, passively. With no power source, no filter to replace, no setting to adjust. It doesn't fight condensation, it prevents the conditions that cause it in the first place. And that single difference changes everything. So let's talk about what's actually happening inside that wall. Because once you understand the mechanism, you'll wonder why we ever stopped using this material in the first place. Clay is made up of microscopic particles. And I mean truly microscopic. We're talking about structures so small that if you lined them up side by side, you'd need millions of them to cross the width of a single human hair. Those particles have an enormous amount of surface area relative to their size, and that surface area is chemically active. It carries a slight electrical charge. And water molecules, which are polar, meaning they have a positive end and a negative end, are naturally attracted to that charge. When the humidity in a room rises, water vapor in the air gets drawn toward the surface of the clay plaster and binds to it. Not in a way that makes the wall feel wet, not in a way that causes any damage. The water molecules simply nestle into the microscopic structure of the clay and stay there. The wall has absorbed the excess moisture from the air before it ever had a chance to hit the cold glass of your window and turn into condensation. Now here's the part that makes this genuinely remarkable. That process is completely reversible. When the air in the room dries out, overnight, when temperatures drop, when you open a window, the clay releases that stored moisture back into the room slowly and evenly. It's not a sponge that just gets wetter and wetter until it can't hold anymore. It's a dynamic system that constantly moves toward equilibrium with whatever environment it finds itself in, and it does all of this without any help from you. No electricity, no maintenance, no degradation over time. The clay doesn't wear out because it isn't consuming anything. It's simply responding to its surroundings, the same way it always has, the same way it always will. So now you want to know what actually goes into this thing, and this is where it gets almost embarrassing in its simplicity. You need 3 ingredients. That's it: raw clay powder, fine sharp sand, and water. In some variations, people add a small amount of wheat paste, basically cooked flour and water, which acts as a binder and gives the finished surface a little more hardness. But even that is optional. Even that costs almost nothing. The clay powder is the key component, and the one that trips people up because they're not sure where to find it. You're not looking for craft clay or the kind that comes in a sealed block for pottery classes. You want raw powdered clay, sometimes sold as ball clay or earthen plaster clay. Builders merchants occasionally stock it. Agricultural suppliers sometimes carry it as a soil amendment. And online, through ceramic suppliers or natural building material shops, you can get a kilogram for somewhere between 1 and 3 pounds. For a window surround, the area of wall immediately around a standard window frame, which is genuinely all you need to treat, 1 kilogram is more than sufficient. You might even have enough left over for a second window. The sand needs to be fine. Coarse sand will give you a rough, unstable finish. Play sand works well. Washed sharp sand, sieved if necessary, works well. You're looking for something that feels almost silky between your fingers. The mix ratio is roughly 2 parts, sand to 1 part, clay powder by volume. You add water slowly, mixing as you go until the texture resembles thick peanut butter, not runny, not crumbly, but holding its shape when you press a thumb into it and pull away cleanly. If you're adding wheat paste, cook a tablespoon of plain flour in about 200 milliliters of water until it thickens. Let it cool and fold it into your mix. It increases adhesion and reduces cracking as the plaster dries. That's your $6 wall, mixed in a bucket, applied with a trowel, and it will outlast every dehumidifier you've ever owned. So you've got your mix sitting in the bucket, that thick cooperative paste that holds its shape and smells faintly of earth. Now you actually put it on the wall. Start by dampening the surface around your window frame, not soaking it, just a light mist with a spray bottle or a damp cloth wiped across the plaster or paint that's already there. This matters more than people think. If the wall is bone dry, it pulls moisture out of your clay mix too fast, and you get cracking before the plaster has even had a chance to bond properly. A damp wall lets the clay cure slowly and evenly, the way it wants to. Apply the mix with a plastering trowel, or honestly, a wide filling knife if that's what you have. Work in sections. Press the clay firmly against the wall, spreading it outward from the window frame in smooth strokes, aiming for a thickness of around 4 to 6 millimeters. You don't need to go further than 30 centimeters out from the frame in any direction. That band of wall immediately surrounding the glass is where the cold surface meets the warm room air, and that's where condensation forms. That's your target zone. Smooth it as you go. Wet your trowel slightly if the surface starts dragging. Don't obsess over perfection. Clay plaster is forgiving, and small irregularities tend to flatten themselves out as it dries. Leave it alone for 24 hours minimum. Resist the urge to touch it. As it dries, it may develop hairline cracks, especially at the edges. Mix a thin slurry of clay and water and brush it over those cracks. Let that dry too. And then it's done. No sanding required. No sealing required. Just done. So here's the question that probably occurred to you somewhere around the mixing stage. If this works so well, if it's this cheap, if the ingredients are sitting in garden centers and DIY shops right now, why isn't anyone selling it? Why isn't there a clay plaster window kit on the shelf at every hardware store? The honest answer is uncomfortable, but it isn't complicated. This stuff lasts. Once it's on your wall, it doesn't degrade. It doesn't need replacing. It doesn't need refilling, recharging, or repurchasing. There's no filter to buy every 3 months, no cartridge to swap out, no follow-up product. You spend £6 once, and the problem is solved, potentially for the lifetime of the building. That is a terrible business model. There is no recurring revenue in something that simply works forever. The dehumidifier market is worth billions globally. The window film market, the anti-condensation spray market, the draft-proofing product market, all of it depends on solutions that are temporary, replaceable, and convenient to repurchase. Clay plaster is none of those things. And it gets more uncomfortable than that. This knowledge isn't new. It isn't niche science buried in obscure journals. Builders knew this for centuries. It was standard practice before synthetic materials made it easier to sell people something instead of teaching them something. What changed wasn't the science. The science stayed the same. What changed was who benefited from what you knew. And right now, you know something most homeowners don't. That's worth more than £6. So try it. Mix up a small batch, apply it to one window reveal, and just watch what happens over the next few weeks. You don't need to take anyone's word for it. The wall will show you. If this helped you, share it with someone who's been wiping down their windows every winter morning and wondering why nothing ever works. And if you want more of this, forgotten techniques, cheap fixes, things that actually last, subscribe, because that's exactly what this channel is for. The information exists, it just needs finding.